I think it's live. All right, we're good. We're good. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even say underrated. It says insanely effective. Insanely is a big word. So let's see if we could. Did I post it? Yeah. All right. And let me know if you could hear it too. If you can't hear it, just say something and I'll pause it and we could work on it.
All right.
I've never seen anyone do most of these exercises in any of the gyms I train at. And yet, I think they're some of the best exercises you can do to build muscle. And in case you don't have access to the equipment required to do these, I'll give you alternatives at the end of the video. First, the flat preacher curl. What makes this different from a traditional preacher curl? Instead of using around a 45-degree incline, we're using a flat bench. Tension on the elbow flexors is greatest when the forearm is parallel to the floor. By using a flat bench, peak tension on the biceps now takes place in an even more stretched position, which likely helps with maximizing muscle growth. The only downsides are that you need to train one arm at a time and that you are shortening the biceps slightly by elevating your shoulder. However, this exercise may be especially beneficial for your brachialis and brachioradialis, since they are not being shortened at the shoulder.
All right.
This is gonna be hard, bro.
All right, I want to ask you right now, can you preacher curl or flat bench curl 80 pounds? 70, I'd say.
Flat? 70. No, not flat. Well, it depends. Like if I'm looking at his setup and where the bracing is at, I've come to a relatively close position and done 70s like a year ago.
Flat?
It's almost flat. Almost. So no, probably not. Nah. Not with that angle, no.
Because for me, that would create a pretty big reduction in load.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because now you're fighting gravity a little different right there.
Yeah. So, and I made this in a TikTok video where it's like if you try to manipulate an exercise where it's such an extreme range of motion, or it has such a harsh resistance profile, you're pretty much not loading the majority. You're likely not loading the majority of the exercise.
Yeah, no, like I personally find, like, I don't even know the angle that I'm using, but it's not straight up. It's one underneath the straight up. It's probably like 80-ish degrees, maybe 70 when I do my dumbbell preacher curls. And again, like, I don't know, people are finding positions to use the least amount of load possible. I'm kind of confused with that, but yeah, interesting first one.
I again, from what I see that, I'm like, sure, but the movement to me just becomes like relatively medium to low load movement for the majority of the exercise. So sure, it could be hard in the lengthen, but then the rest of the exercise, like, it just drops off dramatically.
There's absolutely nothing. Kind of similar to the dumbbell pullover. Now, like, I would respect that if it was like a cable. I can respect that if it's a cable situation, if we're playing parallel like that. But nah, I don't know how I feel about the dumbbell. So no.
Not only that, I think the way that you do it with the preacher curl, like it's still hard in the lengthen position relatively. Like,
yeah,
I don't think it's such a dramatic change from short into lengthen where it's going to cause any difference.
No, I don't. I think people think I don't really challenge that lengthen position in that for whatever reason, but as soon as I try to start flexing my elbow, it's pretty hard. So
yeah, no, I just got up to like doing 3 reps with 50s, and
moving up.
I have. I went from 45, and I've only been able to do one with 50, and now I'm at 50. I'm gonna make a TikTok on it so people could see. I mean, I still have a torn bicep, so
yeah, I'm still stuck at 80s though. But I mean, it's dumbbell, so I don't know what people expect.
All right, let's see what's next. I mean, the whole brachialis and brachioradialis thing, I think that's still like up to debate on why that works. I don't think the shortening of the bicep, maybe, I don't know, but I don't know. We'll see the next one.
This can also be a helpful exercise if you train in a gym without a preacher curl bench, or where the preacher curl bench is always unavailable. Take at least a couple of seconds on the way down pausing briefly in the full stretch. Be explosive out of the bottom position. When you're first starting this exercise, ease into things. Only go as far down as feels comfortable and go slower. You also don't need to do these on a flat bench. Any flat surface will do. I like doing these for sets of 5 to 15 reps. Next, we have the back, the T-bar row. While you might be a fan of the barbell row, I really think you should try the T-bar row instead. First, the T-bar row has a slightly biased resistance profile. When the back is stretched at the bottom of the rep, the external moment arm is largest, amplifying the loaded stretch. In contrast, at the top of the rep, the moment arm decreases, making that portion of the lift easier. This is a big deal since the top of the rep is hardest, but also least beneficial for muscle growth. Finally, the T-bar row forces you to do lengthened partials, since the rep ends when the plate touches your torso. For all these reasons, I think the T-bar row is underrated and should replace the barbell row as the default bent over row variation. Unfortunately,
All right.
We're still doing
All right.
close grip, and how long ago was this video made, bro?
This video was, we'll see. I'll probably see when it's over. I think like a year ago.
2025, 2024, like that's kind of crazy.
No, definitely. Let me see. It was 4 months ago.
I just feel like we should have been gave up close grip. At least, I mean, like, man, it's 3-4 years ago, bro. But
For me, I think his reasoning here makes a little more sense than the preacher curl one.
like, if he can, so if he's going for lats here, I hope he's talking lats here. I mean, just a little bit wider could help that out, like at least like shoulder width ish. I mean, I would respect it, but having that thing bumping against your chest just kind of pointless. So like, it's more respectable for lats, but if you're talking like traps, nah.
I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing is just laziness. And that goes with the two of those two. That goes with the past
Yeah.
one too. Like, there's no way that I'm gonna want to grab a 50-pound dumbbell, set up on the floor, get on my knees, and then do all that when I could just stand up and curl it.
Yeah.
And then with the barbell one, like, I'm not gonna want to be racking up and re-racking plates on that, moving it up, putting a little plate under it. Just the whole like concept of standing up. Like, I'd rather sit down.
Yeah, I find that. I mean, I'm pretty sure most gyms have a seated row machine where there's a grip where you can be about shoulder width, and I think shoulder width would be great with lats. It'd be slightly better than how close this grip is, but other than that, that's all I'm saying. If he's talking lats, okay, not too bad. If he's talking traps, then this is kind of bad.
I mean, I'm not hating on the exercise. I see the reasoning. You know, I could see
Yeah.
the moment arm and the length, like the mid to length of traps and lats. I think, but not enough to convince me to switch over to it. That's me.
Yeah, no, I don't find traps to be all that great lengthened. I just don't see. I don't see that reasoning with traps being great. Like okay, lats, sort of sure. Traps, I mean, who like if you actually kind of stopped and thought about it, um, if you're going from a protracted position back to neutral, and like if you tried to measure the growth from that compared to a neutral position to contracted with traps growth, I would bet my house that you would see greater growth with neutral to contracted versus the protracted to neutral position with traps.
You think so?
I would bet my house.
I would say for me, it'd either be the opposite or no difference at all. Because maybe I'm assuming, I don't know if you're talking about the leverage, but for me, it's like, I don't know if like you can move maybe a retracted position that makes much of a difference. Like, the range of motion that you use is
It's
not,
pretty small, yeah.
it's pretty small. So I don't know if that is going to be big enough. Same thing with the biceps, you know, like you don't really see much of a difference. I don't know. I mean,
Like I'm trying to like I don't know, maybe I don't know. I'm trying to help paint that picture of like being completely protracted with your shoulders all rounded forward and you just come back to neutral. And then again, comparing like a shrug from neutral to, hey, let me, of course, contract there. Like, I'm just not seeing from shoulders rounded to neutral being better than neutral to contracted.
Yeah.
But yeah. Again, is either way, it's still a short range of motion.
Yeah, I mean, for me at most, I don't think we'll see much of a difference. I keep doing a retraction, and if I can't make it to the full short position, I mean, it's not enough for me to be like I'm missing out on gains. If that makes
Oh
sense.
yeah, no.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see what else he comes up with. I think he's still on this one though.
Fortunately, while T-bar rows were quite popular back in the day when Arnold did them, I see next to no one doing them nowadays. I like doing them for sets of 5 to 12 reps, as higher reps can cause too much systemic fatigue to hit local failure in the upper back muscles. As far as technique goes, grab a V handle for the best stretch in your upper back, and get your back as close to horizontal as possible. This will increase stretch on the lats. To maximize resistance in the stretch, start the rep with a weight just barely hovering off the floor. A common mistake is to heave your chest up and down during the rep. Instead, direct the stimulus to your back. Your torso should remain static. This next exercise, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do, and it's one of the better tricep exercises.
Right off the bat, do you think you could guess it?
Maybe something overhead.
I completely forgot. I know it's not going to be a kickback because that's short position.
I can imagine possibly something overhead.
All right, let's see.
The dumbbell school over. The dumbbell school over is a hybrid of the skull crusher and pullover exercise. While no one ever does these, they're likely a pretty solid all-around tricep builder, especially for the long head of the triceps. See, your triceps serve to extend the elbow, but the long head of the triceps is also
What happened?
I'm not mad at this one.
No, you got. I count that as overhead.
Long head wise, this is respectable because you're loading shoulder extension, as well as elbow flexion. So I mean, yeah, pretty good long head here.
I think this is what Paul Carter called the PJ.
PJ, yeah, when he uses like the single dumbbell, but I don't see any issue with this one either though. So this is respectable. I don't mind this one. This is cool, but then I would prefer seeing some heavier loads being used. But
do you think you could lift heavier doing this than a regular skull crusher, or like the same?
possibly, because like how much? Because you're kind of technically adding a bit more to it. Like I said, that shoulder extension. Now if you have a fixed shoulder and you're just trying to load elbow extension, right above your forehead there, I don't see you. You're probably not going to do the same amount of load as compared to you adding that shoulder extension component.
Mm. I think I've done these a couple of times. I like doing regular skull crushers. Actually, I don't even do that much skull crushers, but sometimes I do. But I mean, I don't know. It's not horrible.
I mean, years back, I've played with two stylists, the skull crushers, and I've seen I was able to do more load with the shoulder extension. So, but yeah, overall, I would say this is a good exercise.
It's fine. I mean, would you say it's underrated?
Probably not, because you're loading shoulder extension and some other things where the triceps or the long head would contribute to. So is it something that I would say you have to program? Probably not. But if you wanted to do it just for the sake of having some variation, I mean, you could. But like I can imagine, I mean, there's some people that do pull downs with shoulder extension where the long head would be fine. So it kind of depends. Honestly, I don't see it being anything where it's like detrimental if you're not doing it.
Yeah, and I see like the cable pull downs where people kind of like come up and then come down and stuff. Yeah. I personally don't do it. And I'm looking at all these exercises from more of like a practical standpoint because we could sit here and speculate what's going to grow more with a slight difference in this and that. It's just if we don't have the data for it, I like, for me, with the barbell pullover thing, like, will the traps grow more in a certain position more than the other? I haven't seen any, hypertrophy data looking at that. So
Yeah,
I love to speculate, but I like to be afraid. I tend to be afraid of giving any like hard answers on that to people.
understandable.
Right? But yeah, this one's fun. Yeah.
Responsible for extending your shoulder. That's why you feel a deeper stretch in overhead extensions compared to pushdowns. Dumbbell scrollovers combine both functions of the long head, which maximizes stretch on the long head while still effectively training the rest of the triceps. From my coaching experience, this can also be a good variation to try if you experience some elbow pain during most skull crusher exercises. I like doing these for sets of 10 to 20 reps. To do these, set up just like you would for a skull crusher, but slide up further on the bench and have the dumbbell directly above your shoulder. From here, break at the elbow and shoulder simultaneously. Go down, making sure you reach full tricep stretch at the bottom by flexing your elbow fully. Pause briefly and extend explosively. If you've never done these, they might feel a bit odd. But in all likelihood, these are great overall tricep builders.
I will say if I'm going to do these, it's going to be with heavier weight.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stretch stuff is quite excessive. Because I mean, imagine even if you shorten that ROM and just use a heavier load, yeah, I mean, just because you use about an inch less range of motion isn't going to change what growth looks like. So
yeah, I mean, I also like feeling. I like doing heavy skull crushers. No, I mean, I like doing high reps sometimes just for fun, just to get a pump going. But with these, just for preference, I like to go a little heavier.
yeah,
I don't know if I'll go for a pump with these. But I mean, I guess I could try it. Do you think the elbow thing is valid though? Like, I don't know if you ever
if
given
someone's
these.
having elbow pain, that is actually respectable. Because
I can see.
you're changing the joint torque. You're changing the torque on the elbow. If you're actually moving where the elbow is at. Because you can imagine it can be possibly pretty stressful if you're at that 90-degree position and you're bringing a dumbbell or barbell down. There's like that can be stressful to some people. It just depends how weak maybe some people's elbows are. But if you have the elbow joint moving, that's going to change that torque on the elbow. So
Yeah, I could see it being easier on the elbow. It's hard to say because I don't think I've done these in like a year or so. So
yeah,
I forgot what it feels like.
This next one is one of the most underrated shoulder exercises. Many of these exercises are included in MyoAdapt, the smartest training app out there. MyoAdapt is a coach in your pocket. We've been working on it for years, utilizing all
I'm just gonna go ahead and skip
tailored to you when MyoAdapt finally
skip
launches,
whatever.
and you'll get a chance
I
to
just need to
sign
see
up
the exercises.
Yeah, let me see if I could jump ahead. Was that
with
it?
and
Oh,
improves on discount. The twisted cable face pull takes a gym classic and improves on it. By training one arm at a time, we're able to achieve a few things. First, and most importantly, we're able to achieve a much greater stretch in the rear delts than with a regular face pull. Since the role of the rear delts is to abduct the shoulder, twisting away stretches the rear delt more. Second, if you have any size imbalances, this exercise is an opportunity to remedy them. To perform these, set the cable at shoulder height. Unrack the cable and twist away from the cable just over 90 degrees. You should feel a deep stretch in your rear delts. I like going quite heavy on these. Since face pulls are a compound movement, and you have to perform them one side at a time, going heavier makes sure we hit local muscular failure. Sets of 5 to 12 reps are the sweet spot. Doing these...
all right. I guess there could be some things there to unpack if you want. For me, the way that he was doing it in the first video, it looked more like a mid to short end exercise. And if he's really trying to make it like lengthen, he did point out to rotate the torso, but like I got the cable coming back here and I'm like that, like you're maximally trying to compress your AC joint. But
I don't like it.
He said he doesn't see anybody do it. I don't know if that's for a reason.
I think I've seen people come across all the way across their body though. I mean, is that serving any purpose? Not really. I mean, outside of just being, I guess, stronger in that particular range of motion, it's not doing anything hypertrophy wise. That's all I really see out of a lot of the stretch stuff. I mean, you're building some strength in the particular range of motion that you're trying. But I don't see that's not additional for muscle growth though.
For me, I have done, and I do tend when I do a rear delt cable single arm thing, I do tend to rotate my torso just a little bit, even if it doesn't get me any gains, which I don't know if it will. I mean, any more gains, I don't know if it will, but I mean, for me, it feels a little better. Like I feel my rear delt, I connect with it a little better.
I like being
Yeah,
further down.
I also like the concept of like it's a little more lengthened, so it's like for me, it's like at least I'm hitting something if it's there. If not, I
Yeah.
mean,
I like being kind of mid shortened with rear delts.
yeah.
Um, I can't think of well, I mean maybe chest. I don't mind somewhat lengthened to mid. Just depends on the situation. Um, but I kind of got like I don't focus too much with how deep I can take a stretch on something unless I'm purposely trying to improve flexibility, but I'm still trying to be strong with that range of motion. And not try to use something light just to be using it light. I feel like if they tried to actually be stronger in those ranges of motion, it'd probably help them out a lot more. It would help them out a lot more.
I don't think it's a horrible exercise. I don't think it's like insanely effective type of
Yeah,
level.
nah. The not with the title that I'm looking at now.
I'll cut him the slack that it's probably clickbait, just for
Yeah.
more views. So
Seated can reduce the stabilization required. If I had to do one facepole variation for muscle growth, this would be it. Next, we have a quadricep exercise. We have quite a few studies in the quads showing that focusing on the stretch.
all right, I know exactly where this is going, and I don't even remember the exercise, but it's either going to be a sissy squat or the reverse Nordic.
Possibly.
I'm putting my money on that.
Yeah. Got some plates.
Increases muscle growth. Most notably, two studies. The first, by Pedrosa and colleagues, found greater muscle growth in the vas lateralis and rectus femoris when doing stretched half reps on a leg extension compared to full range of motion reps. The second study, which I am an author on, compared leg extensions with the hips more extended versus more flexed. Extending the hips led to up to 50 to 170% more growth of the rectus femoris. Since the leg extension won't achieve a full stretch on the quads and rectus femoris, we need to look to different quad isolation exercises. I've spoken at length, pun intended, about the reverse Nordic curl and sissy squat being better than the leg extension for muscle growth. But the truth,
All right.
I'm kind of well with the choices. Not a fan. Not like if they can actually make a machine to mimic the stuff, I wouldn't be mad at it. But like the choices that are just being used is just not very. They're not progressible all that much. Um, so if they're so like I mean yeah sure I think one of the studies was on advanced lifters right that leg extension with the extended hip that one was on advanced lifters right. I think
I
we
don't.
talked about that last year.
Oh, what were we talking about? There being active insufficiency or something like that?
Yeah, I might retract from that particular take, but if that was on advanced lifters, I mean that's cool. And like I said, I would probably prefer to see just not stuff like this because you're not going to progress this that much. So if they
Yeah.
can make some machines to replicate the idea, I mean I'd be for it.
I'll say this. It looks like he's bending incredibly backwards on that reverse Nordic.
Yeah, a lot of spine there.
I'd say first of all, if I'm gonna choose, if I'm like looking at a reverse Nordic and a sissy squat, I think the sissy squat might be a little better because
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard in the lengthen. It's still relatively hard in the middle. and then it drops off. The reverse Nordic, it's harder to lengthen, but then it just drops off.
Completely, yeah. So like I said, if there was a machine that could kind of work something out with that, that'd be pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, but I'll also say this: the first study ever done on the lengthened partials was between, I think, 40 and 90 degrees for a reason. Like, it wasn't a coincidence that they did it between that range, because when I spoke with the author, Dr. McMahon, he said that they looked at every single variable of like the internal moment arm, the length tension relationship, and all that, and it's like in that relatively lengthened range of like 90 degrees or so, you get this huge storm coming in of like a lot of like beneficial like muscle length, the moment arms, neural input. He was talking stuff like that, where it's like it's beneficial for, and that's why they saw more growth in that. But any more than that, he doubts. And he told me he did this for like his PhD or something, and he doubts that there's any more growth in that. And we see that with the recent leg press paper and stuff like that, where it's like a really lengthened thing. He goes, the only thing you're going to get out of that is probably like the hip extensors that grow into it. But so, I mean, it was refreshing to hear that, and pretty cool to hear that. So it's like, it's not, I think people over exaggerate the stretch. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it comes to a point where, more stretch isn't always going to be better. But if there is a machine, I do sissy squats at the end of my workout just to test my ability. But if there is an extra stimulus there, nice. But if there is a machine for it, like you said,
if I ended up playing with them, it would be for the sake of my knees, to see what my knees can get better with. But
yeah, that's the main reason why I do them. But I mean, I also am like, well, I mean, I'm getting a little more stretch. If there is any beneficial thing, it'd be nice. I'm not complaining if I get it. If I don't get it, I'm also not worried.
Truth is, there is a third super underrated exercise, the cable leg extension. It has the same benefits as the reverse Nordic curl and sissy squat. It extends the hips, stretching rectus femoris, and allows for full knee flexion range of motion. It's effectively a stretched half rep, since the ground limits your range of motion. It allows you to train one leg at a time, helping with left-to-right imbalances. To set this up, use an ankle strap.
Okay, I didn't know there was a third one, actually. What do you think about that one? It's not bad.
Not mad at it. That's a respectable option. And I honestly, personally believe that if you are able to improve your flexibility, it can probably help your muscle building capabilities as well. And I found that out with like hamstrings, because there was a lot I used to just couldn't do with hamstrings at all. But once I really improved my flexibility, there was a lot more I was able to do, and then just a lot more I was really able to progress. So I mean, I guess it somewhat depends in what context. And I think, like, I think I need to personally work on some more flexible quads. That may help me out a smidge. So I don't know. I think it just depends on the context. So I mean, personally, I would kind of like something like this. I'm just way too lazy to set it up.
The setup for me. I mean, I don't think it's a horrible setup. Like, I'm sure it wouldn't take you no more than a minute, probably.
Yeah, that's a little too much for me, sort of. Because then it's single leg, so you kind of got to swap around quite a bit. Well, I mean, I can end up doing a single set, maybe two, but I don't know. That's a lot of moving, because I got to end up on the ground too. But I'm not mad at the exercise. I think the exercise is pretty good.
Yeah. I'll link
I
with
actually
that
seen someone
too.
else do that too, but they were using some pretty good load with it.
Oh, I think is on social media.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen someone do some pretty good load with that.
this guy named Alec Blenis. I think I probably butchered that, but yeah, I think I've seen him do a lot of that, and he does the full stack.
Yeah. So I might play with it, because, like I said, I need to work on my I need to work on my quad flexibility. That's probably what's holding me back and possibly could help with my knees a little bit.
But in terms of like building your quads, you think it'll make much of a difference from that in like a laying or a lying leg leg extension or regular leg extension?
Do I think it'll be a difference? Maybe from the regional perspective, like if we're looking at it from, if you're looking at it from the hip, sure. Distally, probably not, because you're loading that pretty good. You're loading it pretty decent from the hip, in that position. And same when you was doing the hip extension, or you was doing the leg extension with the extended hip, like you were kind of loading that position. Um, with like an isometric. That's why I said I can probably come retract my stance from last year. Um, that's technically somewhat of an isometric, um, with that extended hip, with that you're loading. So it makes sense to see growth proximally, with the quadriceps, but distally is still somewhat the same growth.
Yeah, I mean, if looking back at their lying leg extension, where it's like they like flat, I think it was like flat down on the bench, or was it like a little tilted up? I swear it was flat down on the bench. And then you take this. I guess the difference would be that this is getting. There's a couple differences, but one of them, the knee is getting a little more flexion. And I
Hmm.
guess what I would question is that if that flexion is needed for similar hypertrophy or more hypertrophy. I don't know. I'd like to
No,
test it
distantly,
out.
I don't see a difference, but I can now. I feel like I actually understand why now they saw the difference, proximally with the quadriceps with the extended hip as compared to like the 90 degrees. So
So hypertrophy wise, fine, but you'll look at it more from like a flexibility, mobility perspective.
personally, yeah, that's what I would look at it from. Do I feel like people need to maybe worry that much about proximal with quadriceps? It could help. Like I said, flexibility wise, for sure, it could help. Um, hypertrophy wise, because I mean the other quadriceps aren't connecting to the hip though. So
I mean, a lot of the people who are into this are like kids. You
yeah,
know, I'm still I'm relatively still on the younger side, but like
same.
they're all.
People think I'm like pushing 40, dude. It's crazy. And so they're
Um,
always talking about some grown man, by the way, if I'm like talking to someone that's literally 2 years apart from me.
well, I'm talking more about like the 16, 15-year olds.
Oh, well, yeah.
And they're the ones who usually ask me, "What can I do to maximize?" I'm like, "You're not maximizing anything anytime soon."
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah. A lot of the maximizing crowd is coming from the newer lifters for sure.
yeah, so I mean, I posted this on my story too. I was like, "Don't worry too much on trying to maximize. Just worry on trying to grow."
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what the next one is.
Attach the strap to your ankle. Face the cable stack and kneel down. Unrack the weight and extend your hips fully. Extend your knee explosively,
Yeah, you can
control
kind
the
of
weight
skip
back
it
up for
down
around 2
because we talked
seconds,
a lot
and
about it.
pause.
What happened, sir?
Yeah, we can skip that. We done talked a lot about it and kind of went over probably why they saw
Yeah.
more growth approximately.
Briefly for reverse Nordic curls, or I haven't seen anyone do. The first is pelican curls. While calisthenics athletes often describe this as the best bicep
Ah,
exercise, regular gym goers continue to sleep on it.
You got something to say?
it's just why. Like, I guess if you just wanted to, like, I don't know, just for variation's sake, sure, but there's no way you can expect this to be any kind of magical thing, like for your biceps. Like, oh, hey, I'm going to see more growth because I'm doing this. No. Nah, that's all I got on that.
For me, you're just really like I made a post about this where you're not really stretching so much of the bicep with an incline curl. It's more so the tendon.
Hmm.
Uh, forgot the one of the um, people who look at this tendon stuff, where they said that the tendon of the upper limb is very much like the lower limb, like the Achilles tendon, where it pretty much contributes to most of the lengthening, and the muscle itself doesn't really lengthen as much. So in this case, it's like if you're trying to maximally stretch it, I'd focus more on like the resistance profile rather than the actual stretch itself.
Yeah,
I'd do this for shoulder mobility.
that's
That'd be me.
respectable. That would be
Like if I'm trying to
respectable.
be a gymnast and I'm trying to like gain strength there, I'd do it.
That's also that's pretty respectable. So I think people should with biceps should just understand the resistance profile. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's the key. This is the TRX too. I think I've tried something similar to this. Maybe not as high as that, but it wasn't that hard. Like it gets really easy once you even bend your arm a little bit, and
Yeah,
then the rest.
it's just a waste of time. Now that's for sure a waste of time because that's not even something you can progress either.
If you're gonna
So
do it on that, you gotta like elevate. I'd say he should elevate his feet on like something so he's kind of like hanging,
mm,
and I think that would put a lot more stress on his shoulder and stuff. So
yeah,
yeah,
next.
skip through it.
Yeah, that one's for sure horrible.
Yes,
That
it
one's
involves some
horrible.
stabilization, and your shoulder flexors are involved. Isolation movement like a preacher curl, but it offers an insane loaded stretch. Steps perform elbow flexion, lunging, and the amount of stabilization for doing these.
Well, that's another thing though. Like the flexion component of the biceps is pretty small, right?
Yeah, I don't think people understand like when they keep talking about stretch with biceps, it's because they're just extending their shoulders. Um, because like you can fully stretch, like you can have a full stretch with your bicep with your arm just in an anatomical position. But for it to really get harder is when people try extending their arm behind their body. Then that's that. But like if you're trying to grow your biceps through shoulder extension, I'm sorry, through shoulder flexion, I mean, then you're not going to get very far with that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna stress it again. I don't want people to like watch this and think that it's like we're predicting what's gonna happen. Like this is more so from just like practicality. Like for me, like I wouldn't do it. I think for me there are better options. I've seen progress. I like seeing progress. I don't know how I'm gonna with a TRX band. Maybe if I get like a weighted vest or something. But yeah.
Horizontal, as you feel comfortable. These are the bodyweight equivalent of the dumbbell fly. Dumbbell
Yeah.
flies are one of the best chest builders out there, and ring flies rival dumbbell flies. The only hang-up is how challenging the movement is. That said, to regress the movement and make it easier, just stay a bit more upright. Just like
I don't have much to say here either, dude. Like now we're just picking stuff where it's like, okay, this is not something that we can truly progress for a long time. Like if you're someone that's actually kind of weak, yeah, you may only do 2, 3 reps here or whatever. But it's like, I mean, once you get pretty good at it or like your chest gets stronger, dude, you can do like 20, 30 reps right here. And that's kind of pointless. So,
I mean, I could see you doing this the entire day.
yeah.
Just
So pretty much now we're just kind of we're getting worse with the options here.
I would do a chest fly, but I don't really. I do a machine fly, honestly. For one, just because I have my gym has a prime machine, so like I could make it harder in the length position without needing to do the dumbbells. Um, and two, I just like the machine better. I
Yeah,
like the dumbbell.
I hate grabbing dumbbells. Um, then yeah, it's easier to load with the machine anyway, and
I
a
don't. I
little
mean,
bit safer.
the dumbbell version though, it's not bad. Like
No,
none of these per se is like bad. Like if you like doing them, sure, but Like the dumbbell version, like if the machine is being used and you do a dumbbell, like I don't think you should worry too much. I'm like, oh man, I got less stimulus,
Yeah.
All right. For me, the dumbbell, mostly for mobility purposes. That's how I see it.
Yeah, the dumbbell, like if you wanted to do like really heavy with dumbbells, you would end up having to flex your elbow for sure. Um, but if I mean, you can probably find that range where you didn't have to flex the elbow much, and work really good from the lengthen to kind of mid-ish position because it's going to drop off once you get towards the top anyway. So I mean, it could be a good option depending how you play with it. Um, but yeah, it would be kind of easier with the machine.
All right. Let's see. Machine just feels better too. I like
Yeah.
stacking things up. Skip it, or you want
Yeah,
to listen to it?
I don't even want to hear that one. There's really there's no explanation you can give for that. Because again, I can do that for 30 reps.
More. I can do that for 30 reps.
Like for the up, I like for shoulder horizontal ab. Exposing your pecs will particularly appreciate these two options. For the triceps, one of the most underrated movements is the dumbbell overhead extension. While the cable pushdown and cable overhead extension see more use, the dumbbell overhead extension really should not be forgotten about. This used to be a staple in the training of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kevin Levrone, and many more. Few tricep isolation movements beat it in terms of versatility. First, its effectiveness. It places a deep stretch on the long head of the triceps, since the shoulder is flexed. It also stretches the other heads of the triceps. Make sure you get into full elbow flexion at the bottom. You can also perform it seated and remove much of the stabilization required. It isolates the triceps.
I like overhead extensions.
I don't. So you already know we have our disagreement here. But that's not a problem. I don't mind it. Um, Now, how I'm looking at it, okay, like I said, I know that one study is brought up a lot, and something I've mentioned recently is if anyone wants to take that same amount of volume that that study did with overhead, and so you can go do an overhead cable extension or whatever, same amount of volume and reps that they did, and then the other arm just do like a banded extension with your arm by the side, same volume, same amount of reps. See how long each arm would take to recover, and then you would probably have your answer. um, with how that study pretty much worked out, and how things looked, especially considering they kind of they had those measurements placed at a relatively rough time to be doing those measurements. I don't think you can possibly really recover much with what was it 3 days. So
For me, I just the dumbbell version of it. I like I just prefer the cable, like the
yeah, I
dumbbell.
would
Like,
prefer cable for sure too.
I
Cable over
wouldn't want
cable.
to like I wouldn't want to grab a heavy dumbbell and then kind of go over here and do that. I also like with the cable, I do single arm. I could use a rope. It feels better. Not that
Yeah,
the
because
dumbbell version is
I
bad.
actually did my fault. Go ahead, my fault.
No, that was it's not that it's a bad variation. It's just
Yeah, no, I actually did overhead like 2 weeks ago for the first time in a while, but it was a machine. Um, but what I did, I mean, I didn't do an excessive number of sets with the overhead. I just didn't like, I did a single set there just to, oh hey, I wanted to do overhead, and then I did my other set with like my arms by my side, and that was it. That's all I did with that. So
yeah. And the machine. I mean, I've done an overhead tricep extension machine, and even then, I just prefer a cable.
yeah,
Just, there's just factors why I choose a cable. If I am going to do a dumbbell one, I might do just single arm. Just feels better. It's easier rather than me kind of fighting, especially when you get like really big. Like, I don't know, someone like
hmm
your size, when you really just try to constrict your arms together. I don't know.
nah,
That feels uncomfortable.
that's kind of rough. But I ain't mad at overhead actually. Like I said, if you kind of play with it right, I mean it's fine. But I mean, I've playing with it myself. I've done some overhead stuff with multiple sets, and it took a little longer to recover from. Or even like JM presses, if I'm doing a bit too many, if I end up doing like, let's say 2 sets with the JM press, it takes a little longer for me to recover from compared to if I did like my banded 45s. So I can only
Mm,
imagine what it's like doing 5 or 6 sets with an overhead extension.
well, do you think part of that could just be because you don't really do a lot of overhead movements, or
Nah, I can't. Nah, I can't go with that. But I mean, I can experiment with it and try it out. Um,
I mean, I've been experimenting with the tricep push down banded.
it's fun.
It's fun, and you get a good pump. I like it. My main one is overhead cables, but pretty much I'm just overhead cable, tricep push down, and then just add a band for just you know variation
Yep.
because I like it. And you get a good.
Pretty much how I see it is just variation. Um, I've kind of just got out of the argument of overhead or arm by the side, which one's better. I kind of got out of that. I just ended up telling people do whatever you feel like doing, dude.
Yeah, the one that I haven't done is that cross cable one. Not because I don't like it, just because in like around here, it's so hard to find a cable stack that's like both freely available. So I
Yeah.
haven't done that one in a while, even though I used to like it a lot.
All right.
Uh,
What's his next option? I ain't mad at the overhead, but I do think it's kind of overrated the way it's kind of being pushed though.
do you think the dumbbell version specifically is overrated, or just the whole overhead concept?
I'd probably go with overhead in general.
Uh, I mean, the versatility wise, I think it's fine. I think it
Yeah,
has good
like I said,
versatility.
I don't mind it very because, like I said, I almost did overhead today. I just didn't because that machine takes a little bit longer for me to load up, and I had to come here, so I just did my regular push down and left. Um, but yeah, I don't. I'm really not. I'm not against overhead though. So
Making sure they're trained close to failure. Since you can use decent loads, its time efficiency is incredible compared to how long it takes to perform. Grab a dumbbell, you can train both arms at once.
I assume he was talking about unilateral and bilateral. I don't see much of a difference of a time if I do a unilateral movement and bilateral movement. I
not
think you do.
much.
I
But I
think
mean,
there's less.
you can still do both arms with a cable though.
You can, yeah. But I mean, if you do a unilateral movement, I think there's ways where you can kind of just like make like the time just kind of be equal with each other.
Yeah.
There's ways you can manipulate that. I think. Um, but yeah, that's just a point that I wanted to.
Kneel would be one of your main tricep exercises. Finally, our last exercise trains the hamstrings. Yep, I saved the most boring muscle group for last. While many swear by the Romanian deadlift, and it's a great exercise, the Smith Machine Good Morning still doesn't get its flowers. It's just as effective for the hamstrings, glutes, and adductors as the Romanian deadlift. The lower body positioning is similar. You get a deep stretch in the hamstrings by keeping the knees back, and you get a great stretch in all the hip extensors by getting into deep hip flexion. The exercise is also harder in the stretch position and easier in the contracted position. However, compared to a Romanian deadlift, it takes far less time to do. You typically use 30 to 40% less weight, which saves time on loading plates. Most Smith machines also already have the plates nearby. Finally, if you're a fellow member of the hashtag long arm gang, you don't need to set up a deficit to get a full stretch. The only downside is that you don't get to train your upper traps or your forearms, I guess. Basically, similar effectiveness as the Romanian deadlift, but with some additional benefits. And yet, no one does these.
What do you
You
think about that
lost me
one?
with how a Romanian deadlift trains traps. That didn't make sense to me. Um, and I find that the people that have issue with their traps and a lot of that stuff, they do end up kind of shrugging a bit. Like I see some people with their form, some people end up kind of shrugging a little bit. But in regards to the good morning, that actually brings me back to what I was saying earlier about the hamstrings, just improving your flexibility, dude. I mean, that probably will help you out with hamstring growth or just training your hamstrings in general. Um, because I mean, you just be able to train them more comfortably through hip extension. Because I can imagine, because like I said, when I first started trying to train my hamstrings through hip extension, it was rough, and that was literally just because of how bad my flexibility was with them. Um, but once was able to crease the optimal muscle length, I mean, dude, I was fine, and so I really don't see that much of an issue with it. But again, it just comes down to trying to force the stretch so much. Just would be a little bit harder to recover from if you're doing too much with it. Outside of that, I kind of don't have much of an issue.
I mean, it's for me, it's fine. I like doing Romanian deadlifts because it's fun and I like loading it up.
Yeah, I feel
Uh,
like you definitely be able to load a stiff leg more than this good morning though for sure.
yeah,
Um, so
I I mean, I don't know. I mean, you got the erectors going there, I guess, right? Just
yeah, I'm not. I can't be too mad at it. It's just when he's. I guess because he's going with the good morning because you can stretch a little more. But then I'm also looking at his knees. His knees aren't exactly straight. He's not stretching that much.
can you
Um,
even stretch a little more? Because I know you do your Jefferson curls and stuff, and if you keep it straight back with straight knees, like
yeah, I like. I think that topic is just some people just have to understand what they can and can't do. Because, like I said, I watched him do it, and like his knees were kind of bent a good bit. I mean, even though, yeah, sure, he may have been pushing his hips back, like he probably wouldn't have ended up going that far back if he kept his knees straight. So it didn't. Honestly, he's not changing that much. Um, yeah, and then I also something I guess for people that have issues with having their knees straight, you don't have to have them completely straight. If you're kind of weak in that position, that's fine. Bend them a little bit. But it just comes down to what you're able to handle and what you're able to progress. Like I said, I was able to progress my hamstrings and the back of my knees. So, but that's because the stuff that you practice. So,
yeah. I mean, for
yeah,
me, without trying to, spending too much time or wasting too much time trying to get into like the whole biomechanics of it and stuff, which I'm sure could take a bit. Uh, I would first of all, if I'm doing this without a Smith machine, I'm doing as a RDL without a Smith machine.
oh,
Hands
absolutely.
down, hands down. With the Smith machine, I don't. I've tried these on Smith machine before, and I feel restricted with these. With these specifically, it doesn't feel comfortable. Like for me, it's okay. Uh, so it's like I'm not a huge fan with it on the Smith machine, but an RDL I can do on a Smith machine more
Yeah. So, I
comfortable.
mean, now that you're actually bringing that up, it really does not look that comfortable.
I
Yeah.
mean, especially I mean you're tall, right? You're what
Yeah.
it looks like, right?
Yeah.
So like I think the taller you are, I guess you gotta. I don't know if that's gonna make much of a difference in being comfortable, but it's like I think it might. Um, but for me, like if I get in there and I feel like I gotta move towards a machine and stuff. I don't know. So like my brain is just like doing RDO. Like it's just easier.
Yeah. I don't find, like I said, I can't be too mad at it, but then there's also like, yeah, I mean, there's better options. So again, for the title, like I said, the clickbaity title, I mean, yeah, no, I can't agree with it for sure. But I wouldn't be just mad at someone doing a good morning though.
I think that was the last exercise.
Just gave
Yeah.
you 9 underrated exercises you should be doing.
All right. I guess we could end it there, but we could say that were there any exercises here that you would say were underrated and
No,
insanely effective?
no.
Anyone that you'd say? I think the ones that were fine were like I think the tricep ones. A lot of them were fine. I'd say nothing
His
horrible.
best possible option in here was that skull crusher with shoulder extension. That's the only one I can be. Oh, hey, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Um, Outside of that, mm, now the quadricep thing about the extended hip, that's kind of respectable. Like I said, I kind of see why there's more proximal growth when I mean, because yeah, now you're loading the rec film as well with that. So from the hip, you're loading it as well. So yeah, you would see some, of course, better growth proximally. So that one is also respectable. Outside of that, yeah, those two, no, nah.
Yeah, I wouldn't change my program or change any exercise in my current program for any of these. I don't know. My mind hasn't changed. I'll look at it and be that's fine. It's cool. But I'll be like, man, I'm missing out if I don't do this.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff, pretty much most of the stuff that was shown though was just stuff where you end up reducing the load significantly just to put yourself in a position to stretch a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of athletes do too, especially with like the knees over toes people. That the whole gang over there, they go into like these extreme ranges of motion, but and then they like the exercise that they do like barely load for them or barely being loaded for the
Yeah.
majority of the movement. And if you're going to transfer that to like an athletic perspective, like I'm not a sports coach or anything, but I don't think that's going to cause any significant adaptations.
No, like I said, if you wanted to, like for me, I ended up being better when I actually loaded those ranges of motion. Like, yeah, hey, I gained them. Now, like, let me get stronger in them. He said, you're pretty much whatever range of motion that you load in practice, you're going to have that adaptations for. You know, if you only train a certain range of motion, you can only expect to be strong in that particular range of motion. And if you get hurt outside of that range of motion, well, it makes sense. You didn't practice the previous, or like the range of motion you got hurt in. So yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with the range of motion a lot of them use. I would like to see them just get stronger with it, but
I mean, that's pretty much all we could say about it.
yeah.
I guess I think I stopped the video not in favor of Milo. I stopped it at a better time. Um, but yeah, this wasn't for any hate. This was just for fun, just some reactions. People you coach. Would you if you were to change anything, or if it would change your mind? Didn't change my mind, but yeah, I think we call it an end to the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome.